Have you ever wondered what life was like before everything we know? Before comfort, before laws, before safety nets? Let's take a journey back in time to a world that was raw, unforgiving, and brutally honest. This is the story of humanity's first cruel reality. Imagine a world where the sun rises not with the promise of a new day, but with the cold, hard question, will I survive until sunset? This was the daily existence for our earliest ancestors. Life wasn't designed to be fair or kind. It was a constant struggle against a world that showed no mercy. Every single day was a battle. Hunger wasn't just a feeling. It was a constant, gnawing presence. The weather wasn't just a topic of conversation. It was a relentless force that could freeze you in your sleep or wash away your shelter in an instant. Danger wasn't a distant threat you read about in the news. It was right outside your cave, lurking in the shadows, waiting for a single moment of weakness. A twisted ankle while hunting wasn't an inconvenience. It was a death sentence. A simple cut could lead to a fatal infection. There were no doctors, no medicine, no understanding of the invisible enemies we now call germs. Disease would sweep through a small group like a wildfire, and all they could do was watch, helpless. Think about the sheer effort it took just to get a drink of clean water, or to find enough food to feed your family for one more day. They didn't have grocery stores or delivery apps. They had spears, sharp stones, and their own two hands. They hunted animals far stronger and faster than them. They foraged for plants, constantly risking poisoning themselves with the wrong berry. Survival wasn't a given. It was earned every single minute of every single day. In T's world, there was no room for childhood as we know it. Children learned to be adults the moment they could walk. They learned to hunt, to hide, to fight. They saw death up close, and it wasn't a tragedy. It was just a part of life. People didn't fear death in the same way we do. They expected it. Life was short, and the goal wasn't to live a long, happy life. The goal was simply to live. As small groups grew into larger tribes, a new kind of cruelty began to emerge. The simple cooperation needed for survival started to give way to something more complicated. Power, the strongest, didn't just lead the hunt. They began to rule. The weak weren't just protected. They were often exploited. This was the dawn of inequality, a shadow that has followed humanity ever since. Rules were created, not to ensure fairness for all, but to maintain control for the few. This was the moment human existence shifted from a simple, brutal struggle against nature to a complex, often cruel struggle against each other. This wasn't a single event. It was a slow grinding realization that washed over generations. It was the first time our species looked at the world and understood that it was unmade for us. It didn't care about our hopes, our dreams, or our pain. This was the first harsh lesson. The first time reality bit back with its full, unforgiving force. This was humanity's first cruel reality, a foundation of struggle upon which everything we've built since then stands. It's a humbling reminder of how far we've come, and the resilience that's coded into our very DNA. The first topic is when survival became necessary. Imagine a world without guarantees, no safety nets, no comfort, no second chances. A world where every single sunrise is a victory, and every sunset brings a new wave of uncertainty. This was the reality for our earliest ancestors. In the dawn of humanity, survival wasn't a choice. It was a relentless, all-consuming demand. Life was measured not in years or decades, but in days, sometimes even hours. There was no concept of planning for a distant future, no retirement fund, no career path. The only goal was to see the next day. The world was raw, unforgiving, and every decision, from which path to take to where to sleep, could be the difference between life and death. At the very center of this existence was food. Forget supermarkets, refrigerators, or even a simple pantry. Early humans were hunters and gatherers. Their lives revolved around the constant search for sustenance. If the hunt failed, hunger wasn't a distant threat. It was an immediate, gnawing reality. If the gatherers returned with empty baskets, the entire group felt the sharp pangs of starvation. A long, harsh winter or a sudden, brutal drought wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a potential death sentence that could wipe out entire families and force desperate migrations into unknown territories. And what about health? In our modern world, we take medicine for granted. A small cut, a sprained ankle. These are minor issues. But for early humans, any injury was a life-threatening crisis. A simple scratch from a branch could become infected, leading to a slow, agonizing death. A twisted ankle meant you couldn't hunt or flee from danger, making you a liability to your group and a target for predators. Pain was a constant companion, and the body's ability to heal was a lottery. There were no antibiotics, no surgeons, no sterile environments. Survival favored the strong, the adaptable, and frankly, the lucky. Beyond the internal struggles of hunger and injury, the external world was a landscape of constant peril. Wild animals, from saber-toothed cats to massive cave bears, were not creatures to be admired from a distance. They were competitors and predators. Every rustle in the bushes, every shadow in the twilight, could signal an imminent attack. Shelter was rudimentary. A cave, a simple hut made of branches, these offered some protection, but they were far from secure. There were no locks, no fortified walls. Every night was a vigil, and sleep was a shallow, restless state. Ears always pricked for the sound of danger. Then there were other humans. While cooperation within a group was essential for hunting large game and defending against threats, encounters with rival groups were often fraught with tension and conflict. Resources like fertile land, clean water, and good hunting grounds were scarce, and competition was fierce. The world was a mosaic of small, isolated bands of people, each fighting for their own patch of existence. This was the birthplace of conflict, a struggle for resources that has echoed throughout human history. Imagine being a child born into this world. Childhood as we know it, a time of play learning, and in a sense was a luxury that didn't exist. From the moment they could walk, children were apprentices in the art of survival. They had to learn which berries were poisonous, how to track animals, how to read the signs of an approaching storm, and how to stay quiet when predators were near. Their education was practical, immediate, and unforgiving. A single mistake could be their last. Those who learned quickly and adapted had a chance. Those who didn't rarely reached adulthood. As human populations slowly began to grow, these pressures intensified. More people meant greater demand for limited resources. This is where we see the early seeds of social structure. Leaders emerged not through elections, but through demonstrations of strength, wisdom, or hunting prowess. The best hunter might lead the chase. The wisest elder might decide when to move the camp. Survival began to shape hierarchy and social dynamics. It created a world where your place in the group could determine your access to food and safety. This era forged the very essence of what it means to be human. It wasn't just about instinct anymore. Survival became a complex puzzle, a struggle that required intelligence, innovation, and social cooperation. The need to overcome these daily challenges drove the development of tools, the mastery of fire, the creation of language, and the formation of complex social bonds. Every flint arrowhead, every cave painting, every shared story around the fire was a testament to this relentless fight for life. Our ancestors didn't just endure, they adapted. They learned to work together, to plan, to innovate. They developed strategies for hunting massive beasts like mammoths, requiring incredible coordination and courage. They learned the cycles of the seasons, figuring out when and where to find food. This constant struggle sharpened their minds and strengthened their communities. The very hardships that threatened to extinguish them were the same forces that fueled their evolution. Think about that for a moment. Every comfort we enjoy today, every technological marvel, every piece of knowledge we possess, is built upon the foundation laid by these early humans who lived and died in a world that offered them nothing. Their resilience, their ingenuity, their sheer will to live is coded into our DNA. We are the descendants of the ultimate survivors. Their world was a crucible, a brutal testing ground that forged humanity. It was a time when life demanded constant effort and offered nothing in return but the chance to see another day. This was the first, and perhaps the greatest, challenge our species ever faced. It was a struggle that defined our past and continues to shape who we are today. When we look back at this primal history, we see not just hardship, but the incredible, unbreakable spirit of human survival. The second topic is nature without mercy. Have you ever felt small in the face of nature, like standing at the edge of the ocean or looking up at a towering mountain? For us, it's a moment of ah. For early humans, that feeling was a constant, terrifying reality. Nature wasn't just a backdrop for their lives. It was the ultimate, absolute ruler. It held the power of life and death, and it showed no mercy. Imagine a world where your very existence hangs on the whim of the weather. Rain wasn't just a gloomy day. It was a difference between a full belly and starvation. A good downpour meant crops would grow, rivers would flow, and animals would stay close. But when the rain stopped, the world dried up. Droughts crept in slowly, silently stealing life. The earth cracked, plants withered, and the animals, your food source, vanished. This wasn't a problem you could solve with a trip to the grocery store. It was a slow, agonizing countdown to hunger, forcing entire communities to abandon their homes in a desperate search for water. People would look up at a clear, blue sky not with joy, but with dread, knowing that its beauty was a death sentence. And then there was the other extreme. Too much water. A sudden, violent flood could wash away everything a family had built in a single night. Homes, tools, food, stores all gone, swallowed by a raging river. Imagine waking up to find your entire world submerged. Your neighbors gone, your future erased. There were no warning systems, no emergency services, just the roar of water and the crushing realization that you were utterly powerless. Nature gave life, but it could take it back in an instant, without a single word of explanation. The seasons themselves were a recurring test of survival. A harsh winter wasn't an excuse to stay inside and drink hot chocolate. It was a brutal siege. The cold seeped into shelters, freezing communities, and making every trip outside a life-threatening risk. Food supplies dwindled day by day, and the biting wind felt like a physical enemy. In Tesume, relentless heat wasn't just uncomfortable, it was draining. It sapped your strength, spoiled your food, and made every physical task a monumental effort. Each season presented a unique set of challenges, a new way for nature to test your will to live. But the most terrifying part, early humans had no idea why any of this was happening. Today, we have science. We understand weather patterns, tectonic plates, and atmospheric pressure. They had nothing: a violent storm, a ground-shaking earthquake, a volcanic eruption. These were not natural phenomena. They were terrifying, inexplicable events. In the absence of knowledge, fear took over. People looked for meaning in the chaos, and what they found were gods, spirits, and unseen forces. A devastating flood wasn't a random act. It was the anger of a river god. A failed harvest wasn't due to lack of rain. It was punishment for some unknown transgression. Every disaster was a personal judgment from a powerful, invisible entity they could never hope to understand, let alone appease. This constant fear shaped their entire worldview, leading them to worship the very forces that tormented them. The shift to farming was one of humanity's greatest achievements, but it also made us more vulnerable than ever. Once people settled down, they were tied to the land. Their fate was completely interwoven with the success or failure of their crops. A single bad harvest could trigger the collapse of an entire society, and starvation wasn't a quick end. It was a slow, creeping horror. People would watch their grain stores empty, their children grow weaker, their community's spirit break. They were trapped, watching their doom approach with agonizing slowness, knowing that no help was coming. The very ground they relied on for life had become their prison. Water, the source of all life, was also a hidden killer. Rivers and lakes provided drinking water and attracted game, but they also harbored invisible dangers. A contaminated water source could unleash a wave of disease that swept through a community with terrifying speed. People would fall ill with fevers, stomach pains, and weakness, and no one understood why. Without the germ theory of disease, they blamed curses, evil spirits, or bad omens. Sickness was a silent assassin, striking from within, turning neighbors and family members into sources of a mysterious, deadly affliction. Nature didn't need to roar to be deadly. It could kill with a silent, invisible touch. Even the animal kingdom was a double-edged sword. Humans hunted animals for food, hides, and tools, a critical part of their survival. But they were also on the menu. A hunt for a deer could be interrupted by a pack of wolves. A trip to gather berries could end with a bear encounter. Every step outside the relative safety of the camp was a risk. Predators were faster, stronger, and perfectly adapted to their environment. Humans had only their wits, their cooperation, and their crude weapons. An encounter in the wild could turn deadly in a heartbeat, a stark reminder that they were not at the top of the food chain. The forest that provided their food was also the home of their hunters. Living under this constant, unrelenting pressure fundamentally shaped who we are. It forced early humans to become masters of observation. They learned the rhythms of the seasons, the patterns of animal migrations, and the signs of a coming storm. They developed stronger shelters, better tools, and complex social structures to increase their chances of survival. They learned to cooperate, to share knowledge, and to look out for one another because they knew that alone, they stood no chance. But they never truly gained control. That was an illusion. The fundamental truth of their existence was that survival wasn't just about effort or skill. It was about luck. It depended on forces that were completely utterly beyond their command. Nature was humanity's first and most powerful ruler, unpredictable, unfeeling, and unforgiving. This was the world that forged us. A world where every sunrise was a victory and every day was a fight against an indifferent giant. The third topic. fourth topic is power, fear, and control. Have you ever wondered why our world is so full of rules, hierarchies, and power struggles? It wasn't always this way. For a long time, the biggest human struggle was simple. Just survive, find food, build shelter, and don't get eaten. But as our societies grew larger and more complex, something new and dangerous emerged, a force that would shape human history forever. Power. And with power came its dark companions, fear and control. Think about it. In those early, growing communities, survival alone was no longer the only game in town. Suddenly, it wasn't just about cooperating to hunt a mammoth. It was about who got the biggest share, who decided where to settle, who made the rules. Leaders started to rise, but not always because they were the wisest or the kindest. Often, they were just the strongest, the most ruthless, or the most charismatic, the ones who could command through violence or sheer influence. The formula was simple and brutal. If you controlled the food supply, you controlled the people who needed to eat. If you controlled the best land, you controlled who could live and farm there. And if you controlled the weapons, you controlled everyone. This was the dawn of a new kind of human struggle, not against nature, but against each other. To maintain this newfound power, rules were created. Now, on the surface, rules sound like a good thing, right? They bring order, prevent chaos. But these early laws were rarely about what we'd call fairness. They were designed to protect the powerful and keep them in charge. Decisions were made at the very top, and everyone below was simply expected to obey. What happened if you didn't? What if you questioned authority? Well, that was a dangerous game to play. Dissent was often met with severe punishment, not just to deal with one person, but to send a message to everyone else. Fear became the most effective tool of control. The threat of public punishment, the enforcement of strict, unforgiving laws, and the certainty of harsh consequences for stepping out of line. This is what kept entire societies in order. Justice, in this new world, was rarely blind. It saw who you were, where you came from, and how much power you had. An act that might be a clever move for a powerful leader could mean ruin or death for a common person. The law wasn't about creating an equal playing field. It was about maintaining stability, even if that stability was built on a foundation of inequality. And this power didn't just control people's actions. It created deep, lasting divisions. Social classes began to form, like invisible walls separating society into different tiers. You had the rulers, the warriors, the priests, and then you had everyone else. The farmers, the laborers, and, in many societies, slaves. Where you were born often sealed your destiny. If you were born a farmer, you would likely die a farmer. Moving up the social ladder was incredibly rare. This inequality wasn't seen as a problem to be solved. It became the accepted, normal way of the world. To strengthen this grip even further, power often wrapped itself in the cloak of the divine. Leaders would claim that they were chosen by the gods, that their authority came from a supernatural source. This was a brilliant move because it shifted the dynamic completely. Now, people didn't just obey out of fear of a king's soldiers. They obeyed out of fear of angering the gods and facing unseen, eternal consequences. How can you challenge a ruler who claims to have the universe on their side? It made power almost untouchable. Naturally, this system was a breeding ground for conflict. When power feels threatened, its first instinct is often violence. Wars were fought not just for survival, but for dominance. Wars for more land, more resources, more subjects to control. And who paid the ultimate price for these conflicts? Almost always, it was the ordinary people, the ones with no say in the matter, who were sent to fight and die for the glory of their leaders. This whole structure, built on power and maintained by fear, had a profound and lasting impact. It kept societies together. Yes, it allowed for the construction of cities and empires, but it did so by crushing individual freedom and ambition. It's one of the cruel ironies of human history. As soon as we solved the basic problem of survival, we invented a new one. Control, instead of cooperation being the default, it was replaced by domination. Power shaped our societies. Fear maintained them, and humanity learned a very difficult lesson, that in the grand theater of history, cruelty was often rewarded, and control was often mistaken for progress. And the echoes of that ancient struggle for power, the whispers of fear and control, can still be heard in our world today, reminding us that the story of humanity is also the story of our long, complicated, and often brutal relationship with power itself. The fifth topic is the cost of being human. Have you ever wondered what it truly costs to become who we are today? Before our modern world of convenience and technology, The price of being human was paid every single day, in sweat, tears, and blood. By the time our early ancestors learned to survive the wild, build the first societies, and create complex systems of power, a harsh truth had become terrifyingly clear. Survival itself came at a staggering cost. To be human meant to carry the weight of physical pain, the sting of emotional loss, and the constant, gnawing anxiety of uncertainty. Life demanded immense sacrifice, and it offered no refunds. In those early days, death wasn't a rare or distant event, something whispered about in hushed tones. It was a constant companion, an intimate part of everyday existence. People saw it up close in the ravages of sickness, in sudden, brutal accidents, during the perils of childbirth, in violent conflicts, and from the slow, grinding pain of hunger. Families lost members with heartbreaking frequency, often without any warning or a chance to say goodbye. Grief was a familiar feeling, a common shadow in every home, but the luxury of time to mourn was something few could afford. Survival did not pause for sadness. The crops still needed to be tended, the hunt had to continue, and the shelter had to be maintained. Life, relentless and unforgiving, always moved forward. Life expectancy was brutally short. The concept of a peaceful retirement, of growing old surrounded by family, was a distant dream for most. Many people never reached what we would consider middle age, let alone old age. The human body, a tool for survival, wore down with alarming speed. It was broken by endless hard labor, weakened by poor and inconsistent nutrition, and frayed by the constant stress of living on the edge. Pain wasn't something to be treated. It was simply a part of life, something to be endured. In a world where every hand was needed, weakness was incredibly dangerous. There were no social safety nets, no systems to care for those who could no longer contribute. If you lost your ability to work, whether through injury, illness, or age, your place in the community, and even your very survival, became frighteningly uncertain. Imagine a life where your dreams were not your own, where your future was decided the moment you were born. For the vast majority of early humans, this was reality. Personal ambition, the idea of choosing your own path, was a luxury that simply didn't exist. Your birth decided your identity, your social status, and your entire future. A farmer's child was destined to become a farmer, tilling the same soil as their parents. A slave's child was born into bondage and would remain a slave. The powerful passed their privilege to their children, and the poor passed down their struggle. Escaping this rigid, predetermined cycle was almost impossible. Human potential was there, just as it is to death a spark of creativity, the fire of ambition, the depth of intellect. But for so many, the relentless pressure of survival crushed that potential long before it ever had a chance to blossom. The artist who never held a brush, the philosopher who never learned to write, the leader who was never given a voice. History is filled with their silent, invisible ghosts. And yet, despite all of this, against all odds, humans endured. We are a species defined by resilience. Our ancestors adapted to impossible circumstances. They learned from their brutal mistakes. And most importantly, they passed that hard-won knowledge forward to the next generation. They formed deep, powerful bonds with each other, telling stories around the fire to make sense of a chaotic world, and finding profound meaning, even in the midst of unimaginable hardship. Cooperation was the key. Alone, an individual was weak, but together, groups could achieve what seemed impossible. They could hunt larger animals, build stronger defenses, and raise more children to adulthood. This shared struggle didn't just ensure survival. It forged culture, it created belief systems, and it built the very foundation of human identity. But progress was a slow, agonizing, and often bloody affair. Each new improvement, each step forward, was a double-edged sword. The invention of farming brought a more stable food supply, but it also led to new diseases, social hierarchies, and conflict over land. The creation of tools made life easier, but it also made warfare more deadly. The building of permanent shelters offered protection, but it also fixed people to one place, making them vulnerable to attack and control. The establishment of social order brought a degree of stability, but it also brought rigid control and systemic inequality. For every problem solved, a new one seemed to emerge. Safety for some was often built on the suffering of others. This was the fundamental, inescapable price of development. So the first cruel reality of our existence wasn't just the external threats of hunger or predators. It was the internal, human realization that our journey would be a constant struggle. A struggle against the natural world, a struggle against each other, and sometimes, the most difficult struggle of all, against ourselves. Survival didn't just shape humanity, it scarred it, leaving deep marks on our collective psyche that we still carry today. Our modern lives, with all their comforts, distractions, and technological marvels, often hide this ancient truth. We are shielded from the raw, unfiltered reality that our ancestors faced. But we should never forget that everything we have, every right we enjoy, every piece of knowledge we possess, every moment of peace we experience, stands upon a mountain of sacrifices made by those who lived and died without protection, without certainty, and often without mercy. This was the true cost of being human, and for millennia, it was paid in full, generation after generation, so that we could one day exist. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into our shared past, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.